Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Apples and Ginos Fantasy Hockey Podcast, a podcast you come to when you're finally ready to take fantasy hockey seriously. My name is Nate Groot-Niblink. I'm the creator of Apples and Ginos, originator of the Zero-G Draft Strategy, and in this episode, Blake and I are going to tell you how to get ready for your fantasy hockey playoffs. Let's get it. And at long last, I have your friend and my best friend, Blake Creamer. Blake, how are you feeling tonight?
You know I'm doing well, buddy. Anytime I get to stare at this mug right here, that's my happy place. But damn, dude, yeah, I was saying this to Evan. I did a show with him the other day. Really fun to be back. I enjoyed the break, but yeah, you and I haven't done a pod for it feels like a couple weeks, and that's just too damn long. You know, this has been a strange year for us. They're trying to keep us apart, but we're gonna finish up strong, buddy. I'm pretty excited, and this is a really fun episode to do with you. This is what's gonna help us get those chips, folks.
Absolutely. I'm not sure who they are in this scenario, but they're definitely trying to keep us
government.
apart. Yeah, the government, the deep state.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
Sure. Specifically conspiring against our fantasy hockey podcast. That's what's going on out there. But in here, we're talking fantasy hockey playoffs. We're going to give you a little bit of a playoff primer. So I think we should kick it off, not delay. Let's do the preamble, Blake.
All right, folks. Yeah, quick stuff here. But we're going to be talking about your playoffs here. Most playoffs are week 21 to 23. Some playoffs are also weeks 22 to 24. So obviously, you need to check that. All right. So go into your settings and make sure you know when your playoffs are. Hopefully, you're listening to this show. That means you're pretty turned on fantasy hockey GM. So you probably know when your playoffs are, but you need to. And yeah, there are some things that we can do here to help ourselves, and we're going to do that here with this episode. So you can definitely bolster your teams for these playoffs, and we absolutely should. So one of the things we want to do first off, same thing we do when we're looking at your week-to-week streaming. You want to go in, you need to start your active players. So go down into your weeks 21, 22, 23, 24 and start active players. And you need to see who's making the cut, right? We need to see where those gaps are, and you need to see who isn't making the lineups on those busy days, right? So before you do anything, make sure you go and do that. All right. And then the next thing we need to look at is, the players that aren't making the cut. Obviously, there's streamers that we know we're going to be bouncing off of our rosters, but who are some of your core players? Maybe players that have been on your roster all season. Who are some of those core guys that are maybe not making the cut or who are on the bubble, right? We need to look at that. And we also need to understand that if you're going to be sitting some of your core players multiple times throughout those playoffs, that is worth looking into to see maybe you can move off of that player and get a player with a better schedule that can get in on some of those off nights, right? So really important stuff. And it's also important, you need to know when your trade deadline is, right? And most of the leagues I'm in, it's funny, I hadn't even looked at this until very recently because I did prep for my playoffs well in advance. But yeah, you need to know when your trade deadline is, right? Because that's, you're going to, making trades is what we're going to try and do to help bolster our squads, right? So most of the trade deadlines in leagues that I'm in, February 25th, right? Which means we need to get our biscuits going right now, right? You need to be making some moves pretty quick here, right? So we're going to try and help you do that. And obviously, some of the things that we're looking at here, off nights, right? And I'm going to go into a little spiel in a little bit here, as we go through this episode. But off nights are obviously pretty important outside of week 21, right? And I will say week 22 has a 13-game heavy night, 2 15-game heavy nights, which Nate and I will go into in more detail, right? Both week 23 and 24 have a 14-game heavy night and a 15-game heavy night. So those off nights are going to be really key, and that's what's going to help you win those chips, right? These are some gross weeks in our playoffs coming at at the worst time, right? So we need to prepare and we need to do it now. So today's show, we're going to look at leagues that have their playoffs in weeks 21 and 23, like I said, and weeks 22 and 24. I also want to mention we have an Apples and Ginos fantasy schedule tool that is available. It's been available in our Discord all season, right? So it's just another reason for you to get into the Apples and Ginos Discord. Link is in the description, but we'll make that available here to you as well. We'll put a link in the description there, and you can see the Apples and Ginos fantasy schedule tool. But Nate, let's get into it. Enough preamble. We got to get the biz on these playoff primers.
All right, let's start off with taking a quick look at the schedule overall. This is mostly just for you people on YouTube to grab a screenshot. This is from the schedule tool. It gives you all the teams and their total games played and off nights for each of the potential playoff weeks that you might be playing. Let's dig in a little bit more, though, on weeks 21 through 23. Hopefully, this is when you're playing your fantasy hockey playoffs. Like we say, you don't want to go to the end because that's when teams are really resting players. They're shutting guys down for the season if they're out of the playoff hunt and they don't want to risk any further injury. All that kind of stuff happens at the end of the year, so try to get into leagues that are ending 1 week early at least. So that in this particular year is going to be March 3rd to April 5th. The best overall schedules for this week's 21 through 23 going to be the New York Rangers, who play 12 games played and 7 off nights, so good stuff there. Colorado plays 11 games played with 6 off nights, and New Jersey plays 11 games played with 5 off nights. Moving over, we have Anaheim, who plays 10 games played with 5 off nights, and St. Louis with 9 games played and 5 off nights. And finally, Boston, 12 games played and 4 off nights. We'll say for Anaheim and St. Louis, both of those teams actually have pretty poor schedules in weeks 21 and 22. Really, you're looking ahead to week 23. So maybe that's more of a target if you're looking at a bye in your league. You really think that you're going to cruise to the finals and you really want to solidify that week 23, then those might be more of a target for that reason. The worst overall schedules here, the Edmonton Oilers and Seattle Kraken both play 9 games played with 0 off nights in this stretch, which is pretty brutal.
Yep.
Winnipeg, not much better, 10 games played, 0 off nights. Minnesota only plays 9 games with 1 off night. Vegas and Nashville play 10 games with 1 off night. And Utah plays 9 games played with 2 off nights. So, again, pretty rough stuff here in this week for those teams. So take a look at any of the players from those teams that you might have that aren't your kind of core players, that are not just absolutely going to make your lineup. Like Jack Eichel, yeah, you're going to be playing Jack Eichel in your fantasy playoffs, but there's going to be some guys around the edges that you're not so sure about. Are you playing Shea Theodore every night in your fantasy hockey playoffs? If he's not there and maybe it's a 10-team league and you got some D options, that might be somebody that you might need to look at. Okay, let's move right along. Let's talk about weeks 21 or 22 to 24 rather. And right off the rip, best schedules, New York Rangers are right back here. They have 7 off nights and 12 games played in this weeks 22 through 24 as well. Should mention March 23rd through April 16th, I believe, is the last game of the season there. So New York Rangers, good schedule, 12 games played, 7 off nights. San Jose plays 14 games, actually, with 6 off nights. Pretty good stuff for them. St. Louis plays 13 games with 5 off nights. And then Colorado and Ottawa both play 13 games with 4 off nights each. The worst schedules, Minnesota again, 11 games played, 1 off night. Edmonton again, Utah, Vegas, 11 games played, 2 off nights. Then Carolina, Columbus, Dallas, and Winnipeg all play 12 games with only 2 off nights. What do you think about these schedules here? Do you think that this is enough to go off of, Blake, or do you think we need to dig in a little deeper?
This is Apples and Ginos, son. We go until the wheels fall off. Okay, we got to get granular here. We got to get into these individual weeks, but it is worth just knowing what Nate just talked about, who has the best overall schedules during that time. But now what we want to do here is we want to get into each individual week and kind of how those play out, right? And we got to get a little bit more granular, right? And something that I like to do, this is something I did a show for the patrons where I was talking about the playoff schedule here. And this is something that kind of came to me, and it's something that Nate and I sort of do already. I just kind of wanted to put a concept to it. And I like to look at these weeks. Are they quality weeks or are they quantity weeks? And I'm going to define those here. But I mean, as you know, throughout the year, there are weeks where off nights are going to be more important, right? Like when the heavy nights are just packed and there are only a few teams who play on the light nights. In weeks like that, the value of an average streamer is going to be higher, right? You're like guys that you normally wouldn't care about, they're going to be much more valuable in those weeks. And I like to call those weeks quantity weeks, right? Because you're focusing on the off nights, right? And you're kind of handcuffed a little bit in terms of there could be an amazing player on the wire, but if you're not getting him into games, you can't pick up that amazing player. It's better to pick up a guy that's, a lesser player that does get to play those off nights. So I call those quantity weeks, right? And then there are other weeks that are a bit more spread out where you can focus more on quality, right, than quantity. And those are weeks, and we'll talk about that. But week 21, when we go into that, is actually a quality week. There are going to be some streamer options, lots of streamer options that you can choose from, right? So you can make a better decision and go on some of the metrics that Nate and I talk about all the time here on Apples and Ginos, as opposed to just going for those strict off nights. So just keep that in mind as we go through these 4 playoff weeks here. Are they quantity weeks? Are they quality weeks, right? And it could make a difference on how you approach that. So let's get into week 21 here. I do think that week 21 it's going to be the most important, obviously, like as we need to get there, right? So if you don't have the bye in week 21, you're battling for your fantasy hockey life, right? So you got to do whatever it takes to win that week, right? So I'd really, if that's your situation, you need to put your focus here on week 21. It doesn't matter about week 22 or 23 if you don't get there, right? So yeah, and obviously if you have the bye week, then week 22 is where you're looking. But let's talk about week 21. It is a heavy week, right? There's lots of games here. I'm going to go through really quickly before I get into the worst and best schedules here, what you're looking at on the screen. Week 21, you got Monday, there's 5 games, Tuesday, 9 games, Wednesday, 6 games, Thursday, 11 games, Friday, 5 games, Saturday, 11 games, and Sunday, 9 games, right? So you've got your 2 busiest nights are 11 games, right? The Thursday and the Saturday. You might be able to get players in there, right? So this to me is a quality week, right? We're looking at lots of decent streamer options there. So let's get into the worst schedules that we're looking at in week 21. And it's pretty clear. You've got the St. Louis Blues. Oh, God. Yeah, it's going to be pretty rough. They only play 2 games with 1 off night. They play the Wednesday, which is a 6-game Wednesday, and then they play the 11-game Saturday, right? So, yeah, it's going to be really hard. Like this team in particular, because you need to advance past week 21. I'd be looking to see if there's anyone out there that is scrapping to make the playoffs, right? Like, does anyone need a guy like Robert Thomas, who's going to be coming back up injury? Does anyone need a guy like Jordan Kyrou, if he still is with the team? Does anyone need even Pavel Buchnevich, Justin Falk, right? These are guys that can do stuff for fantasy. I'd be kicking tires to try and move off some of these players and see if you can fill some gaps. But yeah, St. Louis has the clear worst schedule in week 21. There are also 6 teams that play 3 games with 0 off nights: Edmonton, Minnesota, Montreal, San Jose, Seattle, Vancouver. I mean, you don't necessarily need to drop players from those teams here just because the schedule is reasonable, right? You might be able to get those players in all 3 games. So certainly on the 9-game Tuesday, you can likely get a player in. You can assess after that, right? But we don't need to get off those teams at that point. But hopefully that's making some sense to you, right? Let's talk about the best schedules here for week 21. And there are a couple clear options. It's Calgary Flames and the Colorado Avalanche. They both play 4 games with 3 off nights. Really nice stuff. Both the same schedule, right? Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. Oh, sorry, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, right? And the Sunday is a 9-gamer. So you might be able to get 4 games and get those players in on all those nights. So that's really a key piece here. Would be better if it was in a quantity week as opposed to a quality week, but here we are. Let's so Calgary, let's rip into them. Week 21, like I said, they play 4 and 3. And I'll give you kind of a quick little rundown here. I'm going to get to Nate here in a second because I want to hear about some trade targets, some streamers, some potential stashes. But I'm going to give you the schedule for the Calgary Flames for all 4 weeks. Calgary plays in week 21, 4 games and 3 off nights. That's the moneymaker, because after that, Calgary is really not going to be a team of value, right? Week 22, they play 3 games with 0 off nights. Week 23, 3 games, 1 off night. Week 24, 6 games, 2 off nights. So, and they stink, right? The Flames are not an offensive juggernaut. So, week 21 is really where you're making your bacon with the Calgary Flames. So, Nate, I'm going to throw some players to you and talk to me. First off, are the Flames a team you're potentially interested in just for this week 21 here?
Yeah, I think you can be. Obviously, it's the Calgary Flames, so temper any offensive outburst expectations you might have. They are likely not going to come true. But I do think that Godfrey makes some sense here, right? He may get moved, so that is a risk you're going to have to evaluate. Maybe he does get moved. Maybe some talk of that picks up immediately after the Olympics here
Mhm.
and before your trade deadline, so you can maybe make a better assessment in a couple of days here. So tread with caution, but still, Kadri leading into the break here, he did have 5 points in 5 games. His numbers were starting to turn back around. So I'm relatively interested in Kadri. Uyghur was still on the top power play, and some underlying numbers were not so bad there for him, especially the on ice expected goals for per 60 last 5 games. So you can go there. It's getting harder and harder to
Yeah.
believe in Mackenzie Uyghur, and like we've talked about all year, I do think that at some point here they're just going to hand power play one over to Zane Perek and see what they got with him. So that's another. That's another real possibility here. Matt Coronado started shooting again in a big way, 17 and a half minutes average time on ice in the last 5 games before the Olympic break. So you could look that way. I tend to think, like, especially if Kadri's gone, then things are probably just headed further downhill for Coronado. Huberto's out. What is Coronado going to be able to do individually? I'm not convinced that it's going to be a whole lot, but he's definitely the last one that has upside, I guess I would say, as a potential trade target.
Yep, I like that a lot. And then you're going to have lots of streaming options here for the Calgary Flames. Guys like, the Tinkly Winkly man, Morgan Frost, Connor Zari, Sharon Govich, Gridden as well. Matt Gridden has been getting some power play time out there. Do you have any interest in streaming any of these players here? Is it really just who's on power play one at that point?
Yeah, it's pretty much just power play one, and if anybody gets hot at the right time, right? That's really all that I'm going to be looking for at the time. And we're going to do lots of shows between now and then. We're going to be talking to you
Yep.
about anybody that's popping for us. So we'll get you those names and the guys that we're really feeling at that moment in time.
Yeah, for sure. And I should say, like, if the Flames do start selling off, right? If Kadri goes, I think that it could actually, like, it's not going to be a better environment for Matt Coronado or guys like Frost, Zari, all these guys, but they are going to get more opportunity, right? And that's valuable. Maybe not so much in this week where the Flames are our team of interest, but situations like that are valuable. Like who benefits after a player is traded, right? It's whoever is starting to get more ice time and getting that power play one time. So something to keep an eye on. I do want to shout out as a potential stash, Zane Perek, which Nate mentioned, could get a little bit of run on power play one. That's not a guarantee by any means. So, if you're ahead in the standings and, week 21, you're just looking to bolster that, like, picking up Zane Perek is a really low risk move, because if he doesn't get that time, you just bounce him and, you feel good about yourself, right? But that's it. I mean, in terms of the priority for the Calgary Flames, I think it's pretty low in terms of like making trades for Calgary Flames. I think you're probably better off trying to stream some of these players. So there you go. That's the Calgary Flames there. Let's move on to the next team, who is definitely a team that we're looking at trading some players for. And that's the Colorado Avalanche here. Definitely a better team to target because they have a good spread throughout the entire playoffs here. So, and I'll talk about all 4 playoff weeks for them. Week 21, 4 games with 3 off nights. Excellent stuff. Week 22, 3 games, 0 off nights. Not great. But week 23, 4 games, 3 off nights, which is excellent. And then week 24, 6 games with 1 off night. So, yeah, lots to like about the Colorado Avalanche here. And lots of targets too. So, Nate, why don't you talk to me about some of the players that you're most interested in, and maybe how you would rank some of these Colorado Avalanche in terms of trade targets?
Yeah, it's going to be tough to acquire them, obviously. Like, Martin Necas is going to have a big price tag attached. Brock Nelson has been hot for a long time, so what's it going to cost to acquire him? And Chushkin had 6 points in 5 games before the break. Lehkonen, 4 points in his last 5. So, like, all these guys, I think everybody is hip to the fact that Colorado pretty good, and anybody playing a lot of a lot of hockey alongside Nate McKinnon is probably a good thing. Landeskog is back now, so that's another name in the mix. And so yeah, you are getting back into this Lehkonen, Nichushkin, Landeskog, like who's on top line, who's on top power play. That's feels like it's gonna just keep getting mixed around and thrown in the blender. And yeah, McKinnon in the Olympics has not been himself. It's clear he's dealing with something. Maybe it's just illness. He's been thrown up on the bench, but maybe it's something that might actually linger into the rest of the season. Maybe they feel like they're in a good enough spot and they just shut McKinnon down for a bit. And what does that do? So yeah, there's a lot of variables with a lot of these targets. I mean, I would still be interested in acquiring Natchez because he's gonna get a ton of minutes regardless. Lehkonen, I think, just still makes the most sense as a guy that's going to end up on McKinnon's line the most. But they did try Landeskog there too, so that wouldn't be too shocking. Nichushkin was up there. You know, Natchez missed a couple of games before the Olympics, and so Nichushkin was getting a look on the McKinnon line and on top power play, but so was Lehkonen. So there's really not much there. Nelson, I think, with the stretch that he's had, has actually kind of entrenched himself on the top power play. So if that power play gets going, I think Nelson might actually be a decent chunk of it in terms of his, IPP on that power play. So I'm actually not that mad at a Brock Nelson look if you're looking for a trade target here.
Yeah, I love that. And that's an interesting piece about McKinnon as well, because I believe it probably will happen. And maybe they don't shut him down, but maybe he misses a couple weeks at the very least, right? And it could be pretty painful. So again, who benefits? It's going to be Brock Nelson, right? Who gets a 1C if McKinnon's out? It's going to be Brock Nelson. So when I'm looking at trade targets, I like to think about who could I actually get, right? Like you're in a playoff position probably if you're listen to this show. Like you don't want to give up the farm to try and get a guy like maybe Martin Necas, right? But who would you have to give up to get a guy like Brock Nelson? Who would you have to give up to get a guy like Nichushkin or Lehkonen, right? Those are better trade targets only because I think they're more gettable, right? If that makes sense. And I really agree with you. I think Brock Nelson is going to be the guy that I'm interested in the most. And I would say Landeskog is probably the second best because again, another guy that you don't have to sell the farm for, but it's a nice swing that you can take because he has a chance at top line. He has a chance at top power play, right? And even if he doesn't have that, he's still playing top six. So I really like that. In terms of streamers for the Colorado Avalanche, we're looking at Ross Cameo Colton. Oh, buddy, just put him on the power play. What the hell? I mean, you're 32nd in the league. Get Colton on the power play and do it now. We got Sam Malinsky. Yeah, if you want to really take a ride, I like that player profile there. He's a very good offensive player. Brent Burns as well, if you want shots. And any interest in some of these streamers here on the Abs?
Yeah, I mean, they're streamers. I would have a lot more interest in Ross Colton if you were going up the lineup for whatever reason. Seems unlikely at this point, but it's definitely a guy who can get hot. On the season, Ross Colton ranks 8th in shots per 60, so he's still doing that piece. It's just the minutes, right? Like under 14 minutes average time on
Yep.
ice. Yeah, it's going to be tough for him to have sustained relevance, but could he get hot for a week? Absolutely.
Yep. And then just in terms of a potential stash, I would say Scott Wedgwood there. Like we still don't know. Blackwood is the 1A, I would say, but I've seen Wedgwood dropped in a lot of spots and there's some value there. So definitely just see if he's out there, see if it makes sense for your team. But the Avs have had kind of a poor little stretch here. And I think they obviously are going to bounce back and start putting some good games together. Although this Olympics could really maybe nuke the Avs. Like I'm just looking at Daily Faceoff right now, and they do a really cool thing on Daily Faceoff where they put all the Olympic jerseys on the guys. Like when you're looking at the lines, and there's so many. The Avs have so many Olympians. Like these guys did not get a break. So it's going to be we'll see what happens with the Avs. I tend to think they're going to figure it out and get back to elite play, but there is a world in where yeah, these guys are just tired and they need a break, and maybe they kind of limp into the playoffs a little bit, right? So something to keep an eye on. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to bet on talent there with the Avs. All right, let's move on to the next team. We got to talk about the New Jersey Devils. They play 3 games with 3 off nights. They play Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So yeah, you could pick up a New Jersey Devil here, and then you could hit a back-to-back. There's teams that play Saturday, Sunday back-to-back, so you can look into that. But yeah, all 4 weeks here with the New Jersey Devils. Week 21, they play 3 games, 3 off nights. Week 22, 4 games with 1 off night. Week 23, 4 games with 1 off night, and week 24, 5 games with 1 off night. So it's a decent spread there for the New Jersey Devils. And man, before Jack Hughes kind of went off here in this U.S. Olympic game here today, I still think that there's this narrative around him that he's not fully healthy, and I think there's potential value there to get Jack Hughes. So talk to me about some of these trade targets. Like I think there's, we can throw Bratt in there, we can throw Meyer in there. I would like, what do you think these guys can do, and how confident are you that they're maybe able to put up some points here?
I'm pretty confident in Hughes. To my eyes, anyway, he looks like he's all the way back playing for Team USA, and hopefully, at least some portion of that translates back to
Yep.
the New Jersey Devils. Jesper Bratt is a tougher one, but like theoretically, it should bounce back in a big way. Bratt is a guy who's gotten consistently better year after year after year, and then suddenly this year it all came crashing down. Nobody's really sure why, it seems like. I do think he'll be better rest of season. It would be kind of shocking if he just wilted away in the last little bit here. So that's why I like him as a trade target for myself. I think you can go out and get Meyer. I am not like how many years of Sheldon Keefe underutilizing Timo Meyer and not allowing him to play in the key moments do we have to see before we just realize that it's the ceiling Timo Meyer case is just not there under Sheldon Keefe. So that's my biggest issue, obviously with Meyer, but the ceiling is there. So that's a real case. Yeah, you got Dougie Hamilton, Luke Hughes out with injury. How long does that take?
Yep.
Does Hamilton get moved at the deadline is still a question. That name has obviously been floating out there as well. So there's a lot of moving parts here. The two that I'm most confident in are Hughes and Brett.
Absolutely, buddy. In terms of streamers for the Devils, I mean, you're looking at the usual suspects. How about Shimon Nemec? Had an amazing tournament there. Maybe raised his stock a little bit. Maybe he gets a little bit more time. I totally agree with you about the Sheldon Keefe thing. This is, been my issue with the Devils here. We've talked to, some people about the Devils, and it starts at the top down, but I really think Sheldon Keefe has mismanaged some of the offensive talent that he has here on this team. But we'll see. I mean, they're still in and around the playoffs. There's an outside shot. Like if they get hot, they could be there, right? So they have everything to play for. But in terms of streamers, you got Dawson Mercer, you got Nemec potentially out there. Arseny Gritsiak, if he gets, some run. Nason sometimes gets on power play 1. Like that's a deep league stream if you're looking there. But who interests you the most in terms of a streamer for the Devils?
Yeah, I like Nemec, big tournament. Probably gain some confidence from that. If they do move on from Hamilton, they could run out the year with Nemec on power play 1, and I think he would produce in that scenario. We've seen it already for a short period this season. Gritsiak, similar scenario. If he gets some run up there with Hughes, if he gets a look on power play 1 for any reason, Sheldon Keefe actually has the same moment for once this year.
Right.
Yeah, I would be pretty interested in that if it were to happen.
It's funny to me. Timo Meyer, Nemec, Jack Hughes, massive Olympic tournaments. What's the common denominator here, folks? They're away from Sheldon Keefe. I will say one stash as well. Luke Hughes. This is a guy that he's skating fully in practice. Like he could be back fairly soon. He'll definitely be back, I think, for week 21. So Luke Hughes is a decent stash. I think, I wouldn't be surprised if Dougie Hamilton gets moved out. And I think, it's either Luke Hughes or Nemec getting kind of that bump there. So we'll have to watch what's going on there, but decent stash. Anyways, check out the Devils. We're going to move on to, there's a bunch of teams here that play 4 games with 2 off nights. All of these teams play the 9-game Sunday as well. So potentially 4 games with 3 off nights, right, for these teams. And they are the Rangers, Carolina, Dallas, and Pittsburgh. Let's start with the Rangers. And you're going to be hearing us talk about the Rangers a lot here this episode because they do have the overall best fantasy schedule across the entire playoffs, right? So week 21, Rangers play 4 games with 2 off nights. Week 22, 4 and 4. So that's really key. So remember that with the Rangers. Week 23, they play 4 games with 1 off night. And then week 24, 4 games with 2 off nights. So talk to me about your favorite trade targets here and how you're ranking them, right? Because we got a lot of pieces here. Obviously, Panarin's been moved out, and there's a potential that Trocheck gets moved out. I think Miller's going to stay. I think Zibanejad's probably going to stay. Fox is obviously going to stay. Who's your top trade target here in New York?
Yeah, I think you're right about that, and that's why those are kind of the only guys I've listed here as potential trade targets, is because those are the guys that I think might actually stick around in New York or are most
Yep.
likely to. Adam Fox, I think, is the guy here. I think the shine is worn off on Adam Fox a little bit. And talked about this in a previous episode, but I do think that this might be the absolute lowest point to buy on Adam Fox, whether it's in a dynasty league, keeper league, or just in your regular redraft league. So I'd definitely be interested in acquiring some Adam Fox.
Yep, I love that. I hope people do. Let us know in the comments. Let us know if you can pick up a guy like Adam Fox. I think he might be the best target overall, just in terms of your playoffs, someone that can actually do something for fantasy. Hot take right here. And in terms of the streamers, with Panarin out, we haven't really talked about this too much, but who do you think benefits, right? I mean, Lafreniere has been getting some power play one time. You got Will Cooley out here with that solid peripheral floor, and he's had a decent offensive season. Is there anyone else that you're interested in the Rangers, and how do you sort of rank those streamers?
I think Cooley and Lafreniere are the two that everybody's going to go to. Gabe Perreault could get some run. He was playing with Miller and Zibanejad on that line in the last game before the Olympic break, so could see something going on there. Uh, Lafreniere, like, it's put up or shut up time, it feels like, for him.
For
I
sure.
feel like this is the time of the year, the season where he should get like 20 minutes a night to close out the year. And what is he going to do with it, right?
Yep.
Your safety blanket, the guy who drove everything for your line, the guy who gave you that one good season that you had, is gone. Are you going to do something now, or are you going to forever just be like a 30 to 50 point guy and bounce around within those confines for the rest of your career? So that's what we need to find out about Alexis Lafreniere. I'm willing to take the shot. Like, we've
Yep.
seen crazier things from far less talented players, right? And some of the microstat stuff there does look good with Lafreniere. So there's definitely a chance. I think Cooley is who he is. He's a big time banger with a little bit of scoring touch. I don't think there's a lot of bit of scoring touch there, and so I don't think the ceiling's necessarily that high with Will Cooley. But again, he could get hot for a week or two.
Yep, absolutely, buddy. Let's move on. Talk about the Carolina Hurricanes and see what's what. Okay. So yeah, they've again, same schedule here as the Rangers. Week 21, 4 games with 2 off nights. Week 22, 3 games with 1 off night. So that's not as good. Week 23, 4 games, 1 off night. And then in week 24, 5 games with 0 off nights. Not great, right? So I mean, obviously week 21 is where Carolina is really cooking here. And let's talk about some of their trade targets. And I think these are guys that are gettable to me, and they're star players on this team. So talk to me about the Canes and how you're sort of ranking the trade targets.
Yeah, I think the two guys that I might be interested in acquiring, Sebastian Aho hasn't had a great season, so I think there's a chance that you could still acquire him from his current manager, and he might just have a terrific fantasy playoffs because he's still a terrific player.
Yes.
Nikolai Ehlers has definitely taken some time to acclimatize to Carolina. I do think there's a pretty good chance that he actually has a nice little year or a nice little last 20 games or 25 games of this season here. I think that's a real chance, real ceiling always with Ehlers. Will Rod the Bod actually allow that to happen? Definitely a real concern, but I think you can buy them at probably bargain basement prices at 60-point pace prices, and that's probably the absolute floor for him, even at the current levels of deployment. And if something happens, if he gets on a hot streak and starts being used a little bit more, I think there's a pretty good chance that he could kind of go off a little bit there.
Yeah, he's still not getting a ton of minutes either. What the hell? Learn to play the right way, Nikolai. All right, what are you doing, Nikolaj? The streamers for the Canes, we got Logan Stankoven. Put some stank on it. We got Jackson Blake and Taylor Hall. I mean, how are you ranking those guys? I think they all have some value. Even Taylor Hall, right? This guy's microstat profile is insane. It's just not getting a lot of minutes, not getting a lot of opportunity. But well, what do you think about these players?
Yeah, none of them have been getting a ton of opportunity at really at any point this
Yep.
season. Every once in a while, Jackson Blake gets a pop up on the top power play, and so that's probably what you're most aiming for here. He's also on the best point base if you're looking at that on the season, 23 goal, 47 point pace, and still ranks 31st in individual expected goals for on the season. So I'll take Jackson Blake there.
Beautiful stuff. I should mention I misspelled Carolina on the sheet here. This is freaking terrible. It's embarrassing. All right. I'm sorry about that, folks. All right. I'll do better.
Caroline.
Caroline. Is that Outcast? I
I
don't
think
know.
we've established that I know nothing about a cast
Uh,
already. So
right. Oh my God. Right. I forgot about that. This conversation is over. All right. No, it's not. Let's move on to the next team, the Dallas Stars. All right. Again, 4 games, 2 off nights here. Let's look at all 4 weeks. Week 21, 4 games, 2 off nights. Like I said, week 22, 4 games, 1 off night. Week 23, 3 games, 0 off nights. And week 24, 5 games with 1 off night. Yeah, and they're hitting heavy nights all around here. So it's tough with the Dallas Stars, but again, some good trade targets here, especially again for this week 21. You got to get to week 22 first. So I think it's worth kicking tires on some of these players here. Obviously, the Stars are cooking here, especially on the power play. Is that something that maybe falls off potentially? And like, are you concerned at all about that? And if so, like, how would you sort of rank the trade targets?
yeah, I mean, it's obviously gone exceptionally well for the Dallas Stars power play to this point, and you can see why. It's because every single member of that power play is perfect at that exact role on that power play, and so it makes sense that it's working. But there's always a chance that over the course of the season, with the Olympic break, some teams have done some scouting and they have a little bit of better defense for this power play.
Mm-hmm.
Do I think that's the most likely scenario? No. Do I think it's possible? Yes. So there is always that chance. And Dallas has not been good 5-on-5. We've talked about this before on the podcast. They have not been able to generate nearly as much 5-on-5. And that's really to do with a lot of the depth that they lost over the offseason. And they're trying to make Sam Steele play with Mikko Rantanen. And it's just not working all that often. That being said, I do think there are a few guys that are worth taking a look at here. Rupe Hintz, I think, will probably come relatively cheap. I don't think you're getting Rantanen for anything other than a king's ransom. Same for Heiskanen, same for Jason Robertson, same for Wyatt Johnston
Hi, Joe.
even.
Yep.
So Hintz is probably the last member of that power play that can actually be had at a reasonable price. So you could kick tires there. Thomas Harley, I still think, can fill out your 4th D spot for now, and obviously you always have that nuclear potential if Heiskanen were to miss time during the fantasy playoffs. And Matt Duchene, I think in your deeper leagues, you could look to acquire Matt Duchene. He's next man up for that power play for sure. We've already seen it, and so I think that could be a pretty decent spot for Duchene.
I love it. Was that Duchene again? Oh, it was Duchene. Not on power play 1. What the hell? We need him back up there, but that's fine. Again, I love these picks here, Nate, because these are guys that are gettable, right? And that's an important concept. Like, you can't just be like, I'm going to go pick up Rantanen. Like, no, you're not. There's really no chance you're picking up a guy like Rantanen, but can you get a guy like Hintz or Harley with this upside that they have? I think you can. So let's talk about some streamers here. Yeah, it's just some bits and pieces, right? You got Duchene again, who might be available on your wires if you're in like a 10-teamer, even a 12-teamer, right? Like, he hasn't had a good season, so he might be out there. It's a good way to bolster your squad. Jamie Benn, frick. I mean, damn, he's still kind of doing stuff in like no minutes, but I mean, yeah, he hits, he just puts up a really good point per minute rank. He does that. So I don't know. Are you interested in Jamie Benn at all?
I mean, he had 8 points in the last 5 games before the
Oh
Olympics,
my
skating
God.
under 13 minutes a night. Just insane stuff. 18th in on ice expected goals for per 60, I will say, for Jamie Benn. So there's a little bit of advanced stats boost there for him as well. Do I think that he's likely to have a terrific playoffs for you? No, but is he a streamer worth taking a look at in week 21? Absolutely.
Jamie Benn, advanced stats, darling, according to Nathan Krutniblik, folks. So you heard it here first. All right, we're going to put him on the thumbnail for the YouTube video. Book it. All right. But yeah, that's and we got to talk about Pittsburgh here. So let's move on to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Again, week 21, they play 4 games, 2 off nights. Week 22, 3 games, 0 off nights. That show ain't no good, right? So they're going to be strictly a week 21 hit for you, and then you're going to be moving off these players. So you don't want to give up too much to get any of these Penguins here, I don't think. But week 23, 5 games, 2 off nights. That's nice. Week 24, 4 games, 1 off night. They hit all the super heavy nights in that week. So that's not great, right? You're getting week 21 and week 23 for the Penguins, and the other weeks are basically unrosterable. So something to just note about the Penguins. Some of the trade targets we're looking at: Erik Karlsson, Evgeny Malkin, still doing the thing. Brian Rust, Raquel, he's out there too. You might be able to snake Crosby as a stash. I don't know. We don't know what the issue is there, or what his timeline is going to be injury wise. But I'd throw Crosby in there as well. Like, we're looking at the playoffs, right? He might be back by then. He might be back by the gold medal game. He's Crosby, for God's sake. So how are you ranking these trade targets here, Nathan?
Yeah, I kind of like all of them for different reasons. I think Erik Karlsson has not had a terrific season, and so he can probably be had for, not the King's ransom that he might have commanded in years past. Evgeny Malkin, first in the league in on ice expected goals for per 60 in the 5 games leading up to the Olympics. Like, that's going to play. Brian Rust skating 21 minutes a night. His underlying stats did fall off a bit there. So that's a little bit concerning. Did deal with a little bit of a suspension as well, if you might remember. So maybe that threw him off a little bit. But if he's going to play with Crosby, if Crosby's going to be okay, then I still have interest in Rust. And Raquel, some good stats from Raquel on the season as well, and actually seems to be rounding into form a little bit more as of late. If I had to pick one, I think I go Malkin at this point. I think people are probably willing to move off him. He has slowed down from his torrid, 120-point pace through the first 30 games or something like that.
Yep.
So he has slowed down a bit, but I think he's still a pretty good option, especially if for this early week.
Absolutely, buddy. We've talked a lot about the Pittsburgh Penguins streamers, so I'll just throw it to you. 4 players, and you rank them for me. We got Anthony Mantha. We got Igor Chinikov. We got Justin Brazeau. We got Ben Kindle.
I think I have to go Mantha, but I really like Chinikov too.
Lovely. All right. And just not even ranking Brazeau and Kindle. That's how Nate does it. All right. Just throws them right under the bus.
I'll go Kindle, then Brazeau.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. We just lost to fans of the show and Justin Brazeau and Ben Kindle. Sorry, guys, just call me. We'll sort it out. I mean, we're phasing Nate out anyway. We got the trade time, so that's fine. Let's move on. We got to talk about week 22. They aren't all going to take as long as week 21, but that is an important one, folks. So we really wanted to get that in for you. Let's talk about week 22. And this is going to be a brutal week. This is a brutal streaming week. So, it's almost worth planning for this week. As I'm not saying don't plan for 21, but if you're going to be in a bad place after you start your roster, start your active players, and you see it's going to be pretty bad in week 22, you might need to do something, because this could just sewer your whole chances at a championship, right? Because it's a brutal week. We're going to talk about it here. So heavy week, obviously. Let's get into it here. Oh, sorry, it's a normal week. It's not a heavy week, but the way it's spread out is brutal. So you got a 1-game Monday, 15-game Tuesday, 15 games. What? 2 games on Wednesday, 13-game Thursday, 2-game Friday, 15-game Saturday, 6-game Sunday. You get the gist, folks. This is what we call a quantity week. All right. And it's at the absolute worst time. It's either the first week of your playoffs or the second week of your playoffs. Right. So this is another great reason why you want the bye. If you have a week 21 to 23, you get the bye in week 21. All you can do that whole week is just plan for week 22, because this is going to be a bad week, right? We got 16 teams with 3 games and 0 off nights. That means you have 16 teams that play a 15-game Tuesday, a 13-game Thursday, and a 15-game Saturday. You're not getting players in on those nights. You're going to be sitting core players, right? So this is where you want to really look at that. I'm not going to go through all 16 of those teams, but just take a look at it. It's really bad. I think chances are you're going to be looking at goalie spot streams, right? And that's not a great place to be when you're relying on a goalie spot stream to help you win your fantasy hockey playoffs, right? That's a crapshoot. We don't want that, right? We want to plan ahead. So let's talk about the best teams to stream, the best schedules here, and it's the New York Rangers, right? They play 4 games with 4 off nights. This is it. This is why you're going to get the New York Rangers. It's really important. It's going to open up the week for you a lot. It's going to be a huge edge for you. So you need to be rostering some Rangers. You need to get some of these guys on your squad. All right, so let's look at it. In week 21, they play 4 games, 2 off nights. So that's fine, right? That's the week before this one. Now, week 22, 4 games, 4 off nights. Clear best option. Week 23, they play 4 games with 1 off night. And then week 24, 4 games with 2 off nights. So you can just roster them and set them and forget them the whole time, right? The only problem is with the Rangers, like, who's still going to be on the team, right? Like, I did this in a spot here. I picked up Vinny Tro. And yeah, I mean, there's a good chance he probably goes somewhere else, right? So I'm not even getting the benefit of that. So you're going to have to make some calculated risks. But Nate and I have already talked about the Rangers, so we're not going to go through that again. But you really need to get a hold of some of these Rangers. Go out and kick tires on Adam Fox. I thought Mika Zibanejad had an amazing Olympic tournament. He looked great out there. Zone entries out the wazoo. This guy was generating a ton. He looked great to me. So I'm really there with him. JT Miller, I don't know. I'm not there with JT Miller, but you want him. You want him for this week. So anyways, we've talked about the Rangers enough. Let's move on to some other teams that you're going to have to look at, right? Because if you can't get the Rangers, you're going to have to go with some of these other options, and there's not that many of them, right? We're looking at the Boston Bruins and the Chicago Blackhawks. Both play 4 games with 2 off nights. Let's start with the Boston Bruins. So they play the Tuesday, Wednesday, and then they play Saturday, Sunday. What a bizarre schedule. Just not awesome, right? So you're only getting the Wednesday and the Sunday really from players from Boston. So yeah, let's dig in here. Week 21, 4 games with 1 off night. That's fine for that week. Week 22, 4 games, 2 off nights. Like I said, week 23, 4 games, 1 off night, and week 24, 4 games with 1 off night. So again, you can hold the Bruins all throughout. It's not really a big issue. Let's look at some of the trade targets. Is there anybody on this squad, Nate, that you're looking to go out and acquire besides Nikita Zadorov? All right. Yeah. That's a joke, folks. All right. But I don't know. Who do you like on the Bruins?
Yeah, it is tough because Pasternak is probably ungettable, right? You're going to have to, again, pay through the nose to even get the other manager to think about it. Not really interested in doing that. Morgan Geekie, it feels like he's hot again now. So if you wanted to buy on Morgan Geekie, the window was a while ago. But like, what happens if they decide to do what they did before and move Geekie off the Pasternak line and he goes ice cold again? Because he was brutal. He was like, people were talking about dropping Morgan Geekie, like what, 2 weeks ago or 2 weeks before the Olympics started. Like it was not that long ago. It's crazy how fast things change, especially for a guy who is that tied to Pasternak for his success. The only one that I'm feeling relatively confident in, honestly, is Elias Lindholm. He has been pretty much stapled to Pasternak all year and on the top power play. And so he is kind of the only one here that I actually feel somewhat confident in. He's 31% rostered, so he shows up in the streamers here for us too. In some leagues, he'll definitely be available on your waiver wire, but in deeper leagues, you might have to actually go and get him.
Yep. Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, geez, that's bottom of the barrel stuff, but it's an edge. It's a massive edge in this crappy week, right? To go get yourself a Bruin. So some of the streamers you're looking at, Nate mentioned Lindholm there if he's available. Pavel Zacha, who's injured currently, but I mean, should be healthy by this time, I think is a reasonable option. Power play 1. You got Victor Arvidsson. See you at the party, Victor. He's he's been doing really well in terms of his individual shot and chance generation, but it's always a minutes problem with him and even opportunity. Like he's not on power play 1 enough to really make a big difference. You got Fraser Minton, you got Nikita Zadorov, who besides Lindholm, how are you sort of ranking these players?
Yeah, if Zacha's there, he's probably number 1 just for the minutes problem that you mentioned with Arvidsson. If Arvidsson were to get the kind of minutes that Zacha has routinely gotten, then I would flip those 2. Minton has come on just in terms of deployment and has been relatively hot for a hot minute now. So there might be something there, but I want to see it before I'm ready to crown him the best streamer for the Bruins in the playoffs.
Absolutely, buddy. And then Cats Leagues, go get yourself some Big Z. Nikita Zadorov. He does that. He beefs out of control. Let's talk about the other team with 4 games and 2 off nights, the Chicago Blackhawks. So again, week 21, nice, fine schedule, 4 games, 1 off night. So you can pick up a player here and hold them through week 22. You got 4 games and 2 off nights in this horrible week 22. Then week 23, it gets a little stinky, 3 games, 0 off nights. And then week 24 is fine, 5 games with 2 off nights. So yeah, your trade targets, like Is Bedard on the list here? Are you looking like do you think someone would part with Bedard in a redraft format? And if so, are you looking to pick him up?
I think there's at least a chance. Like, he has definitely slowed down a little bit from the early start that he had. He's still obviously terrific, but there might be a chance that you can get Bedard and not have to pay quite what you might have to for some of the other names that we've mentioned already. So
Yep.
I'd at least kick tires. I think it's worth it. Tyler Bertuzzi has been the other guy providing the most fantasy value on the season. 38 goals, 64-point pace on the season. I think he's run pretty extremely hot to get there, but he is still skating like 20 minutes a night. So yeah, I think you could probably do worse than acquiring Tyler Bertuzzi.
Yeah, you need to think about these players, folks. Just for this week, my God, and we'll get into some of these streamers here. I think this is really where you're going to be getting some value from the Blackhawks, because are you really going to go out and trade for Bertuzzi? Like, you could, but he's more of a throw-in guy as opposed to a guy you target. You know what I mean? So yeah, if he's out there, this is a guy I would pick up for week 21 and hold into week 22. Frank Nazar is another guy I think is a fine target. Like, I think he's a guy that could get a little bit of run here. Now that he's getting his legs, he's back from injury. I like Nazar a lot. You got Toivo Teravainen, who's a good power play performer. Andre Burakovsky had some success with Connor Bedard here this season. And if he gets power play 1, I think that value obviously goes up. How are you ranking those streamers, Nate?
Yeah, Bertuzzi obviously number one if he's available. 48% rostered, I believe, currently. Then I think I would take Nazar. He has been power play 1. If he comes off power play 1, obviously he drops down the list. But
Yep.
then Teravainen, then Burakovsky, just the way we got it on the screen.
I love hearing you talk about Burakovsky, buddy. I've been banging this drum for years. And he's a 31-point man or whatever the hell he is. I love it. Yeah, we got to get that up we got to bump those numbers. Those are rookie numbers, Burakovsky. All right, we got to get to 40 points. All
I
right.
should mention too, Buffalo does have a couple of off nights in this week too, so we have Buffalo on the docket for a little later on. But they do have a couple off nights this week. Might be worth streaming some of their low roster guys for this week as well. Probably not trading for anybody because their weeks are kind of spread out and not joined together in any cohesive manner. But definitely a streamable team for this week.
Yeah, absolutely, buddy. They play the Wednesday and the Friday. Those are both 2 gamers. So, yeah, Buffalo absolutely has basically the same exact value as these teams we just mentioned here. But we'll get into Buffalo in a little bit here. Let's move on. We got to talk about week 23, my guy. We're cooking now. Week 23 as well. This is a heavy week. It's what we call a quantity week. So, again, you're focusing on those off nights as opposed to like the best player available out on the waiver wire, right? It's not as bad as week 22, but we still need to prioritize those off nights. So heavy week for sure. It's a 5-game Monday, 10-game Tuesday, 3-game Wednesday, 14 games on Thursday. That's your beefer. 2 games on Friday, 15 games on Saturday, and then 7 games on Sunday. So the Thursday, Saturday, going to be real problems here in week 23. So we need to keep that in mind. And let's really quickly talk about the worst teams to stream. You got Nashville Predators and the Utah Mammoth really tooting in our faces here with some horrible schedule. They both play the Thursday and the Saturday. So, and that's it. So they're going to be unusable. If you're not like, the top guys on those teams, like the top guys on Nashville, like who are we looking at? Forsberg will make your lineup in those 2 nights, but it's close. You know what I mean? Like there might be better options there. So we'll get into that, but just know that Nashville and Utah both play 2 games, both on those really ridiculous heavy nights. And there are 8 teams that play 3 games with 0 off nights. And that's a 10-game Tuesday is the other busy night. So could be rough stuff, right? So we're looking at we're targeting these off nights, and let's get into it. We got the best schedules here. We got St. Louis, who we're going to talk about, 4 games, 4 off nights, and then we have Anaheim and Colorado showing up here with 4 games and 3 off nights. So let's get granular. Let's talk about St. Louis, and we're in week 23 now, but week 21, we talked about it. They don't have a good schedule, so this is more a team that you want to target for this particular week. So it might lend itself better to a stream as opposed to a trade, right? Because, you're not going to trade for someone that's not going to play for the first 2 weeks of your playoffs, right? It doesn't make any sense. So, but anyways, week 21, 2 games, 1 off night. Week 22, 3 games, 0 off nights. Horrible stuff. unusable for the first 2 weeks. But week 23, they show up to play 4 games, 4 off nights, like we said. And then week 24, 6 games with 1 off night. So that's pretty nice as well. It's going to be a big advantage for you to have some Blues this week. But how do you get there, right? Like, I just, we're not trading for St. Louis players, right? I think we're looking at streamers. So talk to me about the St. Louis streamers, Nate, and how you're ranking them. Like, we've got some options on D, and we do have some power play 1 options as well there with the Blues.
Yeah, so on D you have Pareko, mostly just a blocks guy this year. The goals have dried up from last year. He scored all of his goals last year
Yep.
and none of them this year. You have seen Broberg get some power play 1 looks time to time here, so that's something to keep an eye on for sure. Vucinovic, Braden Shen, Jake Neighbors, Jimmy Snuggerud, and Dalibor Dvorsky are all options here, and I kind of like most of them, to be quite honest with you. Like, I can tell myself a scenario where any of them get hot at the right moment here for the St. Louis Blues. Jimmy Snuggles is obviously my guy. I've waxed poetic about him enough
Yep.
already. Pavel Buchnevich is just that guy who's always going to be on the ice and could, wind up with 4 points in 4 games or something like that in this week, and you're going to be pretty happy with that. Jake Neighbors has started to put together a nice little season. Most of that is due to efficiency, 23% shooting percentage, so that feels a little bit risky. Dalibor Dvorsky, probably not going to be on your list unless it's a deeper league. But again, another player who had a nice little Olympics for himself, made a little bit of a name for himself. Does he carry some momentum back to the St. Louis Blues and keep that thing going, especially if the Blues do start to move out guys like Kyrou? Robert Thomas been in the news as well as a potential
Yep.
guy to trade away. If they start to move guys out, Dvorsky's minutes go up. Could be something there as well. So I like a number of these players. Jimmy Snuggles has to be number 1.
I love it. Yeah. Just remember that, folks. Week 23, it's St. Louis time, right? And we have to keep our finger on the pulse. Who's been moved out? Who's going to be on power play 1? Who's getting that opportunity? These are all viable players, right? So really good stuff there, Nate. Let's move on to the next couple teams. Anaheim and Colorado. We'll talk about the Ducks first. 4 games with 3 off nights here in another brutal week 23. So yeah, week 21, 3 games with 2 off nights. That's fine, but they're better options. Week 22, 3 games with 0 off nights. That's not fine. So again, the Ducks, all these great young players that we love here on the Ducks, it's going to be hard to roster them, right, for those first 2 weeks, because there's going to be better options, certainly in week 22, right? Like these great players like Beckett Seneca, right? Even Troy Terry, Leo Carlson, if he's back, are they making your roster? Like, maybe not. So it's something you're going to have to look at. But week 23, yeah, we're back to business. And then week 24, 5 games with 2 off nights. So let's look at some of the trade targets here. I mean, how are you approaching that, Nate? Again, with like week 21 and 22 not being great for the Anaheim Ducks. We have some great players here, but how are you approaching it, and who are you sort of targeting?
Yeah, I guess we could have mentioned it with St. Louis too, but really the trade targets are probably just for people with a bye who are
Right.
playing weeks 22 through 24, right? Because then you're getting the back end of this where it's actually a decent schedule for Anaheim here and for St. Louis, who we mentioned before. So yeah, that's probably the scenario you're looking at. I think the week 22 thing, because so many teams are 3 games through off nights, like you just are going to be benching people almost certainly. And so, like, to have one guy, you don't want to have a whole roster of guys that are all on the 3 games, 0 off nights. But if you do have a couple of Rangers for week
Mhm.
22, then that really does open you up to say, okay, I can handle having whoever it is, one of these trade targets on my roster for that week. And it's not going to be that big of a deal. So something to keep in mind there. Trade targets here, really, it's just all the top of the lineup guys. Leo Carlson should be back from injury. The timeline was 3 to 5 weeks. That was on January 16th.
Yep.
So we're coming up on the end of that. And so hopefully we get Leo Carlson news and it's good pretty soon. Troy Terry, Cutter Gauthier, Jackson Lacombe, Beckett Seneca, all these guys, obviously, we are big fans of here at Apples and Ginos. I'd be interested in any of them. They all ended the coming into the break on a good streak here. They should be feeling good. They should be well rested. I think the Anaheim Ducks could come out hot here to finish the year, at least on the offensive side of things. And so I think if that is your situation, if you do have a bye and your playoffs are weeks 22 through 24, and that's all pretty locked up, I think you could do worse than looking to acquire one of these guys.
Yeah, I like that. That's worth repeating, folks. Like, if you're playing weeks 22 to 24 in your playoffs and you have the bye in week 22, Yeah, we're trading for some Ducks. It makes some sense, right? Because you're bolstering a brutal week 23 and you're getting all the off nights from these great young players. So in terms of streamers for the Ducks, like Beckett Seneca, if he's still out there on your wire, what the hell are you doing? He shouldn't be there. But yeah, obviously, like that's a guy you're targeting. But how about Mikhail Granlund? How about Chicken Necks, Chris Kreider? Are you interested in those players at all for streams?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, some of Mikhail Grenland's stuff seems to be volume related, and does that volume come down with Leo
Yeah.
Carlson back in the lineup? That's definitely a possibility. Chris Kreider seems to be all the way back. He had some pretty brutal underlying stats for a while, but second in individual expected goals for per 60 in the last 5 games before the Olympics. Yeah, it seems like Chris Kreider's back, and so I do think he's going to be very much in the conversation for streamers. He might even get hot enough that his rostership goes up to the point where he's not available by this point.
Absolutely, buddy. Chicken necks. Oh yeah, buddy. I worry about Chris Kreider. Like the blood flow, how long it takes to get to his brain. I mean, is that as he gets older? Does that have a degenerative effect? I mean, is he foggy? I don't know where I'm going with this. All right, folks, that's fine.
We're going to leave that one to the medical doctors on Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we need. Let's talk again just briefly about the Colorado Avalanche. They play 4 games with 3 off nights here in week 23. We already talked about them and how you're targeting them. So again, it's just another reason why I think you should be targeting some Colorado Avalanche, right? And again, I think Nate and I were both together on Brock Nelson, the grumpiest man on earth, being the guy that you probably want to take a swing at there. So anyways, let's move on to finish it up here. Week 24, folks, we did it. We're getting there. You shouldn't be playing in week 24 in your fantasy hockey playoffs, but if you did, shame on you. How dare you? All right, no, but yeah, it's fine. Some leagues do, and that's absolutely fine. So this is going to be a quantity week as well, but it's not going to be as bad as week 22 or 23. Okay, so yeah, you'll be able to get some bits and pieces in there, but I'll go through it really quickly here. Monday 4 games, Tuesday 11 games, Wednesday 3 games, Thursday 14 games. That's a beefer. That's going to be hard. Friday there's 0 games. Thanks very much, NHL. Saturday, 15 games. And then it goes into the next week. Sunday, 6 games. And then Monday, 10 games. Tuesday, 9 games. Wednesday, 6 games. Thursday, 6 games. So again, it's the Thursday and the Saturday, or the first Thursday and the Saturday, that are really going to be the problems here in week 24. But everything else is pretty damn reasonable. You should be able to get some players in. So, we'll adjust our strategy kind of on the fly. Nate and I will be helping you out, on the pod here as well. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the worst teams to stream. Carolina, nothing could be finer except in this week. Yeah, they're terrible. We got Minnesota and Philadelphia all play 5 games with 0 off nights. So yeah, we'll get into that in a second here. There are also 8 teams that play 3 games with 0 off nights, right? And they're Buffalo, Columbus, Chicago, Dallas, Edmonton, Seattle, Tampa Bay, and Winnipeg, right? Definitely some good streaming teams here. I mean, if it's your last week, you got to be cutthroat, right? You're cutting anybody. Nothing feels better when you cut a guy like, let's say it's like Cale Makar or something. I'm not saying cut Cale Makar, but like you drop like a first round pick because you're like, well, I got to win. And then you actually win because you did that. You just feel like you just galaxy brained, into the stratosphere, right? Does that ever happen to you, Nate?
I have never been accused of galaxy braining, mostly because my brain is too small.
That's right. Your brain's already in the galaxy, buddy. What are you doing? This guy's like, anybody ever watched Pinky and the Brain? You remember Animaniacs? Were you too young for that, Nate?
I have watched Pinky and the Brain. I was not like religiously watching it.
All right, that's fine banter right there, Nate. All right, sweet. Let's talk about the best teams to stream. We got San Jose shows up here for the first time. So yeah, if your league is going to week 24, San Jose is going to be your Huckleberry for sure, right? 7 games, 4 off nights. Seattle shows up here for the first time, 7 games, 3 off nights, and then Buffalo, 5 games with 3 off nights. Nate and I talked about that as well. In that brutal week 22, they have 2 off nights as well. So Buffalo's viable, especially if your playoffs are week 22 to 24. Buffalo is definitely a team you're interested in. Let's talk about the San Jose Sharks, Nathan. Yeah. Oh, you just trying to cut me off, Nate? What are you doing?
I
I'm
thought
in
you
the.
were throwing it to me.
Oh no,
I was ready to stutter all
no,
over the place.
no. I'll give you a softball. Don't worry, buddy. We'll do that. We're out of sync here, folks. Nate and I don't pod anymore together. It's a problem. So San Jose is really not a team you're looking at up until week 24. They have a little bit of value in week 23, but I mean, week 21, 3 games, 0 off nights. You're not using them there. Week 22, 3 games, 0 off nights. You're definitely not using them there. Week 23, 4 games and 2 off nights. Sure, we can start thinking about some Sharks. And then week 24, 7 games with 4 off nights. Really nice stuff. Talk to me about some of the trade targets. Like, how do you approach this, right? They're really only valuable in 1 week. Are you like, is this a team you're actually looking at making trades for players for?
Yeah, I think you can. I think it's again a similar situation. If you're looking at a buy and your weeks 22 through 24 for your playoffs, then this is a team that you could look at. That's probably the only scenario in which I'm actively looking to do it. But I mean, the way that Will Smith is going, I think he could be a guy who gets in for all three of those heavy night games in week 22. I have talked about my love for Will Smith. I think
Oh
he
my.
is only getting better. I don't think it's quite as much as the love that Macklin Celebrini has for Will Smith, but I'm trying to get there. Okay, it's relationship goals right there. So Will
It'll
Smith,
happen for you, buddy.
Will Smith. I mean, over 19 minutes a night, he's on a 76-point pace, which I don't think people really realize at all with Will Smith. And he had 6 points in the last 5 games before the break. He's starting to shoot more. Everything is coming up Will Smith at this moment in time. So I'm pretty interested in acquiring him. Kiefer Sherwood, I think we'll probably get some run actually on that top line. I think that's actually a pretty fun line construction wise.
Yeah.
They do that, so that could be something. Tyler Toffoli is just always going to be around it. Every minute he's on the ice, he's shooting pucks. So Tyler Toffoli, he could do worse as a bit of a deeper league trade target.
All right. Keep my wife's name out your. Oh, sorry. It's Will Smith. Remember the Oscars, Nate?
Yes.
Did you watch this?
Yeah.
Okay. Damn. All right. When I don't get an instant, yeah, I have to explain it, and that just makes the joke worse. So in terms of streamers for the San Jose Sharks, yeah, you'll have some options. I don't think people are running out to pick these guys up, right? We're looking at Toffoli again, just due to his low rostership there on Yahoo. Fine option for streaming here. You got William Eklund. You got Wenberg. Wenberg's out there. He's getting over 20 minutes. I wonder what the Sharks are going to do here at the trade deadline. Like the fact that they went out and got Kiefer Sherwood, I think is a really nice piece there. Nice vote of confidence from Mike Greer. Are they going to do more? Like you got Macklin Celebrini playing at an all-world level. You got Will Smith, like you said. I mean, this guy's underrated. He's really coming on. Do you think the Sharks are going to do anything? Maybe pick up more players? Because if they do, I think guys like obviously Wenberg, his value is going to fall off a cliff. But if they don't do anything, Wenberg and Eklund, I think do have some really good value here in this week.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think if anything, I think they would try to bolster that blue line, which is definitely, in my eyes, the roughest part of that squad. So, yeah, Dougie Hamilton, come on down. Let's make it happen.
Yes, sir. I love that. That would be amazing. All right. So the Sharks, definitely a team here. If you're playing to the end of the season, you're looking at some Sharks there. Let's move on to another team here. The Kraken. The Kraken has been released in week 24. It only took 24 weeks, and now we're actually interested in some Seattle Kraken. So shout out to them. Shout out to Lane Lambert. Anyways, week 21, 3 games, 0 off nights. No, thank you. Week 22, 3 games, 0 off nights. Hell no. Week 23, 3 games, 0 off nights. Not a chance in hell. But week 24, 7 games, 3 off nights. So we're not trading for any Seattle Kraken. I think that's common sense. You probably shouldn't ever really trade. Well, Jared McCann, maybe if you made a trade for McCann this year or Vince Dunn, like kudos to you. But so who are we streaming? Rank some of these Seattle Kraken streamers and how you're doing it here in week 24.
Yeah, I think there's three guys I'm kind of interested in here. Eberle, Beniers, and Tolvanen. I think that is the order that I would rank them in. I think Jordan Eberle, as the captain, is just going to get all the minutes, and we've seen him be like relatively efficient. Yep. He's on a 30-goal, 58-point pace on the season. Like that'll play for fantasy. That's a good streamer level player. 30-goal pace, I'll take that. Matty Beniers has come on a little bit as of late. The shot numbers have crept up a little bit. He's now on a 20-goal, 54-point pace. You know, depending on your league, that's definitely streamable territory. Tolvanen is a guy who probably has to get hot. We did see when they had all those injuries, when McCann was out, when Schwartz was out, that Tolvanen actually got some big minutes and was doing a lot with it. And so if a scenario like that plays out again, I would have a lot of interest in Tolvanen.
I love it. There you go. Let's talk about the last team here that we're interested in, the Buffalo Sabres. God, I hope Tage is healthy. Dude, please. I mean, oh God. The Olympics for injuries, this has been brutal. But anyways, I mean, Buffalo's been playing amazing before the Olympic break here. I'm really hoping they kind of take it home and make the playoffs here. They got a lot to play for. So let's talk about week 21, 4 games, 0 off nights. That's fine. Week 22, 3 games with 2 off nights. Again, fine. That's like you could have these Sabres players in pretty much the entire playoffs here. Week 23 is going to be the worst for them. It's 3 games, 0 off nights. But week 24, we're back to 5 games and 3 off nights. So 3 of those 4 weeks, the Sabres are absolutely viable. Let's talk about some of the players here. In terms of trade targets, I don't think you're making trades for their big guys here. So it's really going to be a stream team here with the Sabres. But I found throughout the year, there's plenty of Sabres available on the wire, even power play 1 guys. So talk to me about the Sabres and how you're ranking them here. We got guys like Byram and Owen Power on the back end. You got even Matthias Samuelsson. God, people are rostering him and he's doing fine. Guys, power play 1 guys like Jason Zucker, that dog, Josh Doan, right? Ryan McLeod is doing stuff. How are you ranking these streamers?
Yeah, I think Josh Jones may have been dealing with something. His individual and on ice numbers really took a dip there before the Olympics. So hopefully, if that is the case, that he comes back fully fresh and rejuvenated, ready to go. Tage Thompson is good to go as well, and Josh Jones can reprise his role there. I
Please.
will say that the power play there with Sucker, I think Sucker is actually really good on the power play, and I think he's a key reason why that actually works. So I have some love for Jason Zucker as well. I should also note that Jack Quinn was the last guy to be the 5th member of that power play as well. So another player that you can keep an eye on. Ryan McLeod had 6 assists in the last 5 games before the Olympic break here, and so he's definitely a guy who can get hot at the right time too. Byram, similar thing from the back end. If I'm ranking them, I think Doan is the most likely guy based on everything we've seen over the full body of work on the season to have a really great playoffs here, or at least this playoff week. And then Jason Zucker would be my number 2. Then obviously Ryan McLeod and probably Jack Quinn you could throw in the same tier there. Byram on the back end.
Byram on the back end. Title your sex tape. That doesn't make any sense. But that's it, folks. That's going to be our playoff primer. And one thing I want to say before I throw to you, Nate, let's finish this off. Hit us up, right? This is the time where your patronage of Apples and Ginos is going to pay off the most. Let us help you get those chips. Hit us up in the DMs. Hit us up in the Discord. We are ready to go. We got to go full send here to the end of the season, and we want to get as many of you championships as possible. So let's get to biz. Nathan, finish it off.
Right. Well, if you made it this far and you're still with us, you should probably click the link in the description. Join the Discord community. Come and talk fantasy hockey with 2,000 plus other fantasy hockey managers. If you don't mind clicking like, if you could give us a rating on your podcast application, a review would be extra nice. Subscribe, comment, whatever you're able to do really does help us out. That is going to be all that we've got for this episode. Hopefully it brought you some value, helped you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard today came from Natural Stat Trick and 18 Skaters, and all the microstats that we discussed came from all 3 zones. Many thanks to Matt Creamer for supplying the music for the podcast. That's it, folks. Much love.